Hey guys, what's happening? It's the Tominator. So it's a new year, and I figured let's start it off with a bang. We're talking about three of the biggest and baddest mass monsters to ever storm the stage. This is going to be a three-way, no, not that sort of three-way, a three-way battle between 2003 Ronnie Coleman, 2009 Jay Cutler, and 2020 Big Ramy. In other words, this is a heavyweight matchup for the ages. And I can already hear a lot of old school fans and purists out there getting offended at merely mentioning Ramy's name alongside these bodybuilding legends. How dare you compare him to the GOAT Ronnie Coleman? He's not even in the same league. Heck, he's not even fit to wash Jay's posing trunks. Well, I got news for you. I put together photo comparisons of all the mandatory and semi-relaxed poses, and Big Ramy can hold his own with these two. Now, I'm not saying he's better. Certainly it's going to be a monumental task to outdo Big Ron in 03, but he's by no means getting smoked either. And sure, Jay might have had his infamous quad stomp, and Ronnie might have looked like a freaking mutant alien when he turned around. But did either of them bust out and start strumming an air guitar mid-routine? Didn't think so. Alright, so right here in the front relaxed, you can already see what I mean. I give this to Big Ramy. He's even bigger and wider than Jay, and cuts a better outline than Ronnie. Now granted, Coleman's photo's taken from an off angle, but even so, I'm not a fan of his close-legged stance. This might have worked for old school guys like Lee Haney, but come on, Big Ron. Those tree trunks are too huge to be smushing together like that. From the side, Ramy is again making a strong case for himself. Ronnie's presentation leaves something to be desired. It might have been a poorly timed pick, but we're not seeing any definition through the midsection, and he could probably benefit from twisting a bit more towards the camera. Jay looks terrific. This is actually one of the better photos of him from this year, and if anything, his image might be slightly scaled up, but he's still getting thoroughly outmuscled. You gotta keep in mind, Ronnie and Ramy were both hovering around 290 pounds. Ronnie was 287, and Ramy was allegedly 290 on the dot, whereas Jay was only about 255 pounds here. Correct me if I'm wrong, because it's really difficult to find specific contest weights for these guys, so I'm going off memory. But he was basically giving up 30 plus pounds compared to these two, so if he looks smaller, that's not by mistake, it's for good reason. They were all around the same height too. Ronnie was roughly 5'11", whereas Big Ramy and Jay both stood around 5'9", 5'10" at the most. And Jay's got a large frame, so he was legit giving up about 30 pounds of solid muscle. Even so, there's a case to be made for him here. But I'm going with Big Ramy once again, with Jay in second and Ronnie third in the side relaxed. But don't you worry, this isn't some sort of Big Ramy fanboy fest, because he gets obliterated from the rear. I mean, Ronnie really tears him a new one. Other than quad sweep and maybe the calves, Big Ramy is losing in every conceivable way. The back, glutes, and hamstrings all go to Coleman by a mile. Ronnie even looks wider here, at least through the lats. I guess you could say Ramy takes the shoulders for what it's worth, but these minor victories are not nearly enough to win the shot. I couldn't find Jay in the rear relax, but it's safe to say he'd be getting blown out too. It might be close between him and Ramy, but no one is touching this supernatural specimen from 2003. So that's it for the so-called symmetry round. On to the muscularity round. And I decided to try something a little different this time and remove the image backgrounds, since it was getting kinda distracting having 3 clashing sets of backdrops in every comparison. Instead, I've added my own, a different one for every pose, and hopefully that's not going too overboard, but I was just having a bit of fun with it. You guys can let me know in the comments if you prefer this approach, or if I should just stick with the original backgrounds going forward. So anyway, in this front double bi, once again, it's gotta be Ronnie. The biceps alone give him the edge. It's like soaring mountain peaks next to rolling hills. Don't get me wrong, Ramy and even Jay also have a great set of guns, although Jay's forearms are pretty weak. But Ronnie's arms are just crazy looking here. And when it comes to Big Ramy, his proportions look a little off. Obviously, the calves don't match the thighs, but we all already knew that. No, it was something else as well. I was trying to put my finger on it, and I think I figured it out. His arms are too short for his body. Just compare the length of his upper arms next to Coleman's or Cutler's, and you'll see what I mean. His bis and tris are still enormous, but they look a little stunted, and I think that somewhat spoils the flow of this pose for him. Not to mention his torso looks overly long, so I'd probably put him in last here. He's got wow factor for sure, but so does Ronnie. And Jay is just so proportionate and polished, I'd put him ahead too. In the front lat spread though, I gotta admit I've always admired Ramy in this one. He's so damn wide, it's hard to top this when he's on. And those gigantic quads and powerful delts give him a tremendous X-frame. Ronnie could and probably should be winning, but his execution was so janky at this point. The way he tucked his chin in like that, smushing his neck. And again, I'm not a fan of the narrow stance. It just looks really forced and uncomfortable, and that subpar presentation hurts him here. Jay looks balanced and composed as usual. This is a really solid lat spread, but it doesn't command your attention as much as the others, so I'd have him in third. Ronnie takes runner-up, but Big Ramy comes away with this one. In the side chest, man, it's gotta be said, Jay is getting the short end of the stick in this video. I spent hours cropping and resizing these photos, but no matter what, he looks smaller than he probably should. I think one thing that needs to be taken into consideration in picture comparisons like this is not only that the photo quality and lighting are different, but the camera angles too, guys. Most of Jay's photos seem to be snapped from a low angle, meaning his upper body and head are going to look slightly smaller than normal. This is unavoidable, even when scaled correctly, because Ramy's and Ramy's are taken from a higher angle, probably closer to chest level from what I can tell. Anyways, even so, he was always going to be hard-pressed to compete with these two behemoths in the side chest. This was never a knockout punch for Jay like it was for Ronnie or Big Ramy in 2020. I still like Ronnie a little more. His pecs are a little rounder and his shoulders are bigger, especially that front delt, plus the upper body showing more vascularity. Downstairs though, Ramy's got him beat on the hamstring sweep, and he's arguably showing more detail in the legs and glute ham tie-in overall. To be fair, Ronnie's not turning to the side as much, so we can't see the hamstrings as well. In general, I'd say Ronnie had better hamstrings, but maybe not when it comes to the sweep. So this is a very close race, and Ramy crushes it too, but I'm going to give it to Ronnie here. In the back double, it's a no-brainer. Ronnie is running away with it. The back thickness is too much, and those glutes and hams, forget about it. Between Ramy and Jay though, I think Ramy's got his number. More striated glutes, bigger traps and delts, and wider upper back. You can definitely see what Sean Ray was saying about Ramy resembling Jay Cutler in this pose. They both are very shallow through the lower back. The lats end sort of abruptly, halfway down, in a bunch of folded skin. Nevertheless, these guys were so big and wide structurally, this deficiency wasn't enough to prevent them from rightfully winning the Sandow, in Jay's case multiple times. Here's a shot of them pulling back for that rear lat spread, showing off the lower back detail and conditioning. Again, it's Ronnie easily, most defined lower lats, and the lower body goes without saying. Jay and Ramy are very close though. Again, I'm leaning slightly towards Big Ramy for the better glutes and traps, but it's not a super strong shot for either man. The rear lat spread is a big improvement, however. Ramy and Jay finally get to display their true width, and they both look exceptional. Jay might even have the cleanest V-taper, and his hamstrings are looking better than Ramy's now. Ramy still outdoes him when it comes to the glutes, though, and his raw width going shoulder to shoulder is probably greater as well. Although I'm not as crazy about his outline here. I think Jay's got superior shape and symmetry. I'd still put Ramy ahead, but only marginally so. Neither can compare to Ronnie, though, who still crushes it through the traps, glutes, and hamstrings. In terms of the lats, I don't think he's doing himself any favors leaning forward like that. That's only detracting from his upper body width. And in this picture anyways, I'm noticing a slight asymmetry in the lats, with the right one flaring out a little further. Even so, these flaws are not enough to derail the king, as his freak factor and insane conditioning from the back cannot be rivaled. Okay, so Cutler's been having a tough time so far, but in the side triceps, I'd say he wins his first pose. Yeah, Ramy looks pretty good, especially below the waist, but when you look at the arms themselves, Jay pulls ahead. He's got the thickest outer triceps of the three, and those washboard abs are the icing on the cake. From the waist down, he's losing, but he does enough up top and in terms of posing technique to seal the deal. This is actually a really good shot of Ronnie. Usually he looks a lot worse in the side tri, but this is downright respectable. He's keeping the stomach in check, and the triceps are striated from top to bottom. With his dense chest and massive legs, you could even make a solid argument for him winning, unbelievable as that may sound at face value. We all know that he's never been very proficient in this pose. 9 times out of 10, I'd say Jay or Ramy would beat him here, but I'm not so sure in Ramy's case this time around. Big Ramy's side leg is glorious, but it almost undermines him here, making the triceps look even smaller by comparison. Even so, I'm gonna somewhat hesitantly put him in second, because aside from the arm itself, I like him better. This just happens to be a very flattering pick for Ronnie, and a pretty average one for Ramy, so it's probably a little deceptive. The ab and thighs, another strong mandatory for Jay. He is a little blocky through the waist, but his midsection packs so much fine detail, it's hard to ignore. And the quads are deeply separated and feathered, especially that leading leg. I actually think Jay's picture quality isn't doing him justice in this video. Ronnie's quads look sharper, but I guarantee you if Jay's photos were higher definition, that wouldn't be the case, because he was dialed in this year and his quads were always super shredded. Big Ramy looks great as well. He carves the best outline with the trimmest waistline, good lat flare, and the best outer quad sweep hands down. I'm not really digging the abs themselves though. They're decent enough, but could be more symmetrical and defined, especially in terms of that line down the middle. Then again, Jay's abs are also misaligned, so we can't ding him too much. And as for Ronnie, this might well be the best ab and thigh pick of his career, at least from 2000 and onward. The abs are very sharp and the quads look incredible. He is a little too thick through the obliques though. Honestly, there are no losers here. You could make a case for any one of them. Personally, knowing what I know, I'm going to give Jay the benefit of the doubt. I think in general, he's got the best ab and thigh pose, certainly the most detail and separation of the three. And come on, let's cut the guy some slack. He's only taken one pose so far. So in the interest of keeping things competitive, let's go ahead and give him the nod here. After that, I'm going with Big Ramy. Again, kudos to Coleman. He looks shockingly good here. But like I said, I think this flattering picture is a bit misleading. Let's not kid ourselves, this was never a dominant pose for him. The most muscular was, though. So I've got 3 comparisons for this one. First up is the hands on hip, which I think has to go to one of these two on the left. On the one hand, Ronnie is thicker and denser, especially through the pecs and even when it comes to the shoulders. On the other hand, Ramy's midsection is smaller, and that shoulder-to-waist ratio is simply outrageous, not to mention the thigh sweep. Ramy's structure in this one is practically unbeatable. Yet my eyes keep drifting back to Ronnie. Probably the lighting was better, or at least he was more oiled up, because you can see the light bouncing off his body, really highlighting those muscle bellies beautifully. His legs aren't as big as Ramy's, but they're much better balanced. So yeah, I'm going with the 8-time Mr. O here. Ramy's a close second, but Jay is a fairly distant third. No disrespect to Cutler, because this hands-on hip would be good enough to defeat just about anybody else apart from these two. He's complete and well-proportioned, with amazing separation in the quads and abs. It's just that his chest and shoulders don't quite measure up, and his upper body lacks some much-needed oomph. In the one hand on hip, it's basically the same pose, and yet an entirely different outcome. Ramy looks even better now, straight up. His chest has come to life a little with that upper-lower split. and the leading thigh is now showing some traces of feathering, which we couldn't discern before. In contrast, Big Ron looks bloated here. The photographer might have just caught him while he was taking a breath, but hey man, that's not my problem, I'm just calling it how I see it. And the fact of the matter is that Ronnie doesn't look as impressive as he did a moment ago. Jay is still last, and my god, does he ever look tiny next to these two? But go ahead, look at the cropping and be my guest, tell me how this is a scaling issue. I swear it's gotta be the camera lens or angle or something, because they're cropped at the same part of the calf. I mean, he's not leaning forward as much as Ramy, certainly, but even still, it's like a boy amongst men. In the crab, though, here we go. This is a good finisher for Jay. He's killing it right here, and for once, he's got the perfect angle. The traps are mountainous and extremely separated from the clavicles and shoulders. The chest is broad, the midsection tight and flexed, and the quads even show great sweep here, something he wasn't particularly ever known for. I'm going to award him the W on this one. I couldn't find Big Ramy in the crab. I don't think he even hit it this year, so instead we're going with this hands together variation. Gotta say, I'm not a huge fan. It's solid enough, but the other two shots were better for him, because now he looks a little narrower up top. I don't think he has the triceps to really nail this one either. If, say, Phil Heath or Kevin Levrone did this, you can bet their arms would look a lot bigger. And as for Ronnie, this is not a good crab shot for him. Unfortunately, it was the only one I could find from this year, so that's what we've got to judge. But again, that stomach looks a little bloated, and it's basically ruining the pose for him. The chest, the delts, the arms, the legs are all lethal, but when you've got a big, smooth stomach, it spoils the effect. A certain 7-time Mr. Olympia could tell you more about that. Even so, I'm going to place him ahead of Ramy here because Ronnie's got a huge advantage when it comes to muscle maturity. His physique is just denser and way more detailed. Ramy's upper body looks soft and lifeless by comparison. Now, it's got to be said, Ronnie would usually mop the floor with these guys in the crab most muscular, like 90% of the time. But in this specific matchup, Jay looks better. Overall, Ronnie still comes out on top in the most muscular when we factor in all the variations. So, at the end of the day, 2003 Ronnie Coleman took that pose, the rear lat spread, back double bi, side chest, front double bi, and the rear relaxed. Plus the Christmas tree pose if you want to count that. 2009 Jay Cutler seized the side tricep, the ab and thigh, and that's about it. Maybe you could argue he deserved the side relax, but that's not the way I saw it. Big Ramy claimed the front relaxed, side relaxed, and front lat spread. He was also very close in the side chest and ab and thigh, and you could even make an argument for him in the side tri and most muscular, although I'd say that's a bit of a stretch. So in conclusion, I hope this video proves just how good Big Ramy really was. Sure, he was no match for Ronnie at his peak, but virtually nobody is. Shot for shot, however, he did manage to outperform arguably the best version of Jay Cutler, and that's no laughing matter. After all, Big Ramy had about 35 pounds on Jay and was in similar condition. You gotta remember, guys, Jay wasn't competing against monsters like this back when he won in 2009. It was people like Dexter Jackson, Branch Warren, and younger and smaller versions of Phil and Kai. That's why he was able to, shine so much. He wasn't getting overshadowed by anyone. Now, it's true that Ramy might not have been as balanced, or even as aesthetic, but I would say that aside from that iconic quad stomp, he easily had more wow factor. But of course, this is all just my opinion, and you're entitled to your own. Comparisons like this will always be flawed because it's impossible to get the scaling 100% accurate, and the lighting and photo quality will always be inconsistent when we're comparing different shows. Plus, depending on the picture selection, the same person could arrive at completely different conclusions going pose for pose. So yeah, at the end of the day, this is really just a rough estimation for entertainment purposes. To that end, I hope it was successful in keeping your interest, and hopefully you agreed, or at least can appreciate where I was coming from with most of these decisions. If so, please hit that thumbs up and subscribe for more detailed bodybuilding analysis. But until next time, this has been the Tominator signing off, and
I'll be back.